She dumped me after 2 years, prioritizing fun and new connections over our relationship, leaving me feeling like I never mattered. Summary: this is quite lengthy, and I understand if few people read it. My former partner ended our relationship without showing any emotion after 2 years, during which 1.5 years were spent supporting her through depression. She decided to prioritize her social life, training, and meeting new people. Regrettably, I need to express my feelings and seek opinions from impartial outsiders. My relationship with my ex concluded about a month ago. Overview: N, 30 years old, female, is 9 years younger than me, nearing her 30th birthday, and has faced difficulties launching her career due to poor training decisions, wasted time, and intermittent psychological challenges, untreated depression. In contrast, I, 40 years old, male, have a stable job and consider myself an average guy. My only distinguishing traits are my height, 1.81 meters, and bilingual abilities. Year 0, we encountered one another 2 years ago via shared interests and quickly discovered more similarities. N possesses a unique quality: she is very gentle, almost shy, reminiscent of Phoebe from Friends, the slightly quirky, yet lovable character everyone appreciates. She seamlessly blended into my social circle. N relocated to my city to escape a prior environment that had deepened her depression. She intended to stay for a year but chose to remain upon meeting me. That was great. The initial phase was peculiar. We connected well. It wasn't overwhelming, but it felt pleasing. My previous intense relationships had not succeeded. She was remarkably patient, whereas I could be harsh at times. It sort of worked. I exhibited occasional fits of anger, entirely unjustifiable. But gradually, due to her forbearance, I learned to soften and adopt a more open-minded perspective. I appreciated this new version of myself. She accepted my medium-term plans to relocate abroad, although I could already sense her growing weariness, not just from my sporadic anger, but primarily due to her new job. She was employed with individuals with disabilities, a survival job, investing much effort for minimal reward. I watched her deteriorate until one night she burst into tears. I encouraged her to take sick leave due to burnout. She was off work for 3 months and received a prescription for antidepressants, which she chose not to take. I later discovered this and found it difficult to comprehend her choice. Our relationship was making progress, but I noticed her mental health declining. Her survival job was exhausting her, and she couldn't advance her side business in a completely different field. She became increasingly anxious. Nevertheless, as a couple, we established our little routines: lunch dates, nerdy nights, affectionate nicknames, and frequent I love yous. In summary, we cared for one another. Our sexual life, although not outstanding, she was not very comfortable with it was acceptable. Year 1, she came up with countless ideas to escape her predicament: various training programs, an internship abroad, funded by the region, although she did not speak English. She began learning the language rapidly. She also decided to enroll in training courses to further her career and ultimately left her survival job. At one stage, she even considered becoming a masseuse to generate additional income. I tried to anchor her to reality, mentioning that I was losing track of her plans. She acknowledged this. The training ended up being pseudoscientific nonsense. She hadn't conducted proper research and felt embarrassed she didn't even have the courage to inform me. She also attempted to start a YouTube channel focused on her travels and interests. Well, why not? The prospect of an internship abroad concerned me, not due to her desire to participate, but because she wanted to do it independently, without me. She was eager to experience life far away on her own. I understood her perspective, but found it risky for a couple that had been together for less than a year. We argued, intensely and for a prolonged period, and I ultimately relented. I didn't want to prevent her from pursuing her aspirations, even if it meant sacrificing our relationship. She applied, but was unsuccessful in the interviews due to her limited English proficiency. I congratulated her for her effort and encouraged her to try again next year. She appeared more energetic and dynamic. She abandoned thoughts of starting her business and focused solely on English language learning, which was acceptable. After my last outburst, our sexual life completely ceased. It caused her to feel blocked. I understood, apologized, and continued my efforts to become a calmer, more empathetic individual. I didn't pressure her and assured her that it wouldn't happen again, which I upheld. Mentally, she was deteriorating. I couldn't fully grasp the reasons, but I observed her increasing anxiety and withdrawal. We ceased lunch dates. She required 1 or 2 days alone, spending nights at her place without me. She spent her evenings playing M-Morps with her gaming group, mostly ex-partners. I acknowledged her need for solo time and refrained from judging or criticizing her interactions with former relationships. At work, things were adequate, not exceptional, but she wasn't dreading it either. As time progressed, she seemed to fade away. I urged her to consult a doctor again. I emphasized the necessity for a substantial break and appropriate treatment. She received prescriptions for antidepressants, anxiolytics, and another sick leave. Initially, she took only the antidepressants. I had to persuade her to avoid repeating the previous year's misstep and to start taking the anxiolytics a month later. Her condition stabilized. I began to take on a larger share of the relationship. She required extensive alone time, and I respected that. It pained me a bit, but I didn't want her to sense that. She was already struggling. Our time together was pleasant, no arguments, no stress. I generally complied with her desires. One concern was that she became very self-centered. For example, I had a birthday celebration with my family, 600 kilometers away. She was invited and had time off but opted to stay behind because she felt too tired. I was disappointed but understood depression can be cruel. Year 2, she worsened. Our sexual relationship remained non-existent. Her business concept stagnated. She was still trapped in her exhausting job. I could only assure her that we would relocate abroad soon. I actively searched for jobs overseas. Her mood turned increasingly bleak. I encouraged her to seek a psychiatrist. The doctor's evaluation revealed that she suffered from severe depression, necessitating therapy and stronger medication. When she adhered to her treatment, she was fine. When she forgot, it was disastrous. One day, after a light conversation, she realized she had no energy left for our relationship. She expressed her desire to part ways to concentrate solely on herself. I spent an hour trying to convey that her depression was influencing her perspective. I reassured her, boosted her self-esteem, and maintained a lighthearted approach. However, that 1-hour breakup frightened me. I felt a deep knot in my stomach. With new medications and therapy on the horizon, she exhibited optimism. She believed we would find happiness after this challenging period. I shared that sentiment. She even discovered a credible training program associated with her field. Her family provided her with financial support, and I assisted with logistics. Finally, she seemed to be on the right path. Yet, she became increasingly distant. She remained sweet, but we no longer enjoyed lunch dates or afternoon outings. We still spent evenings together, which was fine if it helped her mental stability. There remained no sexual desire. I never mentioned it, respecting her condition. Then came 2025. Therapy began. She faced a choice between addressing her challenging parents or discussing our relationship. She opted to focus on our relationship. She described me as initially somewhat angry, but having evolved into a very understanding and supportive partner during her illness. The therapist commended my progress and patience. However, she grew even more distant. After a week of frequent outings, I finally expressed my feelings. I felt neglected. I reassured her I understood it wasn't intentional, but I needed to feel loved. The final therapy session arrived. She sent me a heartfelt message before it. 1 hour later, she ended our relationship. During therapy, she decided she no longer wished to maintain a romantic relationship. She wanted to concentrate solely on herself, on socializing and meeting new people. Maintaining a relationship felt too burdensome for her. 3 days later, she went skiing with friends and published a video on Instagram, which she rarely does, a well-made video featuring various clips from that day. She appeared immensely happy. A friend who accompanied her mentioned she stated, "I hope he doesn't watch that video, otherwise he will be enraged." And indeed, I saw it, and it hurt. That alone exemplifies her lack of empathy. We had wished each other well after the breakup, yet here she was, self-absorbed and unbothered by the pain she caused me. Just 3 days after our separation, others described the video as thoughtless. I evolved like a Pokémon. I invested financial resources, patience, time, and energy for no return on investment. I faced rejection because socializing took precedence over me. So here we are, approximately 4 to 5 weeks post-breakup. The pain lingers. I did my utmost to assist and support her. Perhaps I demanded too much as things progressed. I know I wasn't flawless, and I certainly reacted poorly at times, but I genuinely gave it my all. Regarding the sexual aspect, I often felt that intimacy was awkward with her. She exhibited minimal sexual allure and seemed somewhat blocked. She had experienced sexual aggression several times in the past and continued to feel the impact of it. She was never shy or prudish with me, just lacking desire. Additionally, a child she worked with had a crisis and violently grabbed her breast, causing her to cry for a week. This suggests that despite my occasional ignorance, her traumas were real, and I attempted to address them. Story 2. I moved 14 hours to live with my mom, only to find I had 2 months to leave. I chaotically scrambled for a new home with my siblings. Hello, friends. I'm going to do my utmost to keep this brief, so grab your underwear, pour yourself a rum and coke, and prepare for the submarine journey into the sea of nonsense. To provide some context, my parents, 62 years old male and 62 years old female, are conservative Christians who believe that the former president is a manifestation of Christ's return and consider all LGBTQ+ individuals to be pedophiles. Now, let me introduce my siblings and myself. My elder sister, 27 years old female, is the most flamboyant straight Christian you could ever encounter. My younger sibling, 23 non-binary, takes the darkness of the world and creatively utilizes it as a smoky eye, and I, 25, gender fluid, am at a loss for a witty self-description. These introductions are truly the worst, aren't they? Now, onto the narrative. Where to start? I could begin by discussing how my mother emotionally and mentally mistreated my siblings and me when we began asserting our independence during our teenage years, or how she separated us from our father when we were young because she supposed he had behaved improperly toward my older sister. I could also mention how my father attempted to instill his outdated misogyny and homophobia in us. But at this point, you grasp the essence. Things really spiraled downwards when my parents informed me of their move to Florida. Don't ask me why, and that my mother would be living there alone until my father retired for the second time again. Don't ask me why. I had just experienced a particularly painful breakup and was feeling the travel itch that comes with being a military child. I wanted to be with my mother, triple don't ask me why, and believed that since it had been a few years since our last conflicts, which had been frequent, we had both matured enough to overlook our differences. I was extremely mistaken. However, I did not realize this until I had packed my car with all my belongings, crammed myself and my cat inside, and embarked on the 14-hour journey. The issues we had while I stayed with her for 6 months were numerous, including differing religious views. She is a conservative Christian, and I practice Celtic paganism. Differences in sexuality. She is a heterosexual woman, while I identify as gender fluid. Conflicting life aspirations. She believed I should aim to marry a good Christian man like her and have as many children as possible, while I wanted to establish a career and find love in that order, and our differing views on helpfulness, apparently, clearing her overgrown backyard, cleaning the tiles in her backyard, removing an oversized cover from her atrium, and moving heavy furniture around did not qualify as enough assistance. Just to emphasize, I am a petite individual weighing 120 pounds, so this was quite a challenge for me at that time. Finding employment in their area of Florida proved difficult for most of my stay, so I became a driver for Instacart, which she deemed a misuse of my time and fuel. We agreed on that point, but it was the only job available to me, and I wasn't being finicky. At the midpoint of my stay, my mother sat me down and assigned me a task. You won't guess what it was. She demanded that within 2 months, I either enroll in the college of her choice, which I would have to pay for with my limited funds, or find my own accommodation, any place as long as it wasn't under her roof. If I didn't vacate by the last day of the 2nd month, she would dispose of my belongings on the curb, along with me. When I inquired about where she expected me to go, she suggested I could try the various homeless shelters and halfway houses in Florida, adding, and I quote, "It wasn't her concern." I admit I panicked for a moment. During those 2 months, I desperately sought any job opportunities and eventually landed a part-time position at a restaurant. However, with only a month and a half to spare, I realized I could not afford any housing in their region of Florida, which was far too costly for me. I reached out to friends and siblings, finally striking gold with my older sister, who said she'd 27 years old female and her roommate, 21 non-binary, would be thrilled to have another roommate, offering to help me escape the situation I was in. I stored everything but the essentials and took my cat along with me to my sister's state. Thus began another 6 months of searching for work, which finally culminated in my current job. I'm doing significantly better now, thankfully. During this stressful period, my mother frequently contacted me to check on me and see how I was handling things. Still feeling a bit resentful about her behavior while I lived with her, I only responded with brief, exhausted texts to inform her and my father that I was doing fine. Around this time, my sister shared what she remembered about our mother's decision to take us away from our father. I was too young to recall this, mentioning that she had not fully comprehended it until our father brought it up. Disclaimer, he revealed this to her during the pandemic because I had enlisted in the Army, and my recruiter mentioned a public school in which we were enrolled. This was odd, as I had only briefly attended a public school, otherwise being homeschooled. The school enrollment wasn't one that I remembered. While my sibling was visiting at this time, we all discussed it, and they exhibited a strong reaction to my sister's account, not so much recalling memories, but rather responding to their lack thereof. As I held my sibling in my arms, feeling their entire body tremble from the intensity of their sobs, I decided I would refrain from communicating with my parents for the time being. My sister and sibling concurred. This marked the beginning of our vow to not speak to our parents, with my sister asking us not to disclose what our father had told her just yet. She preferred to wait until things calmed down after their move to address it with them. Thus commenced the most outrageous gaslighting from my mother and subtle manipulation from my father in my life. My mother claimed she didn't think my offense was trying too hard and that we simply didn't care about her, prompting her to stop checking in on you girls. Moreover, I must mention that she and our father utterly refused to acknowledge my siblings' non-binary identity and consistently misgender and deadname them. This infuriates me, even though my sibling has become accustomed to it by now. The most amusing aspect of that text, she copied and pasted it, merely changing the name at the top to match my sister's and siblings' names. She couldn't muster the creativity to craft something personal for the 3 children she adored so much. A few weeks passed, and my father reached out to inquire about my sibling's address. Remembering that my sibling had expressed a desire to avoid any communication with him, I confirmed they did not wish to provide him with any information. They reassured me. I texted my dad back, stating that they wanted no contact or correspondence from him. This led to an awkward conversation as I attempted to convey all the ways he had disappointed us growing up, deliberately leaving out the most significant issue concerning our mother separating us from him. I firmly stated that my sibling wanted nothing to do with him. Ever. When he asked what I wanted him to pass on to my mother, I said he should convey nothing at all, as we were in the process of writing letters outlining our feelings and expectations regarding our relationships with her. None of us were willing to engage with either of them until we felt assured that they would genuinely listen to our concerns. He claimed to understand, but either I failed to communicate effectively, or he simply didn't care because, over the next 2 weeks, he attempted to contact my sibling by every means imaginable, calling and texting their number and reaching out to their former roommate, you name it. I kept a record of everything, but none of it compared to the Christmas letter we received from our mother, who hadn't tried to reach out since her attempt at gaslighting. I'll include it here, dear, older sister, and Op. My gift this Christmas, I ask you to forgive me for all things I have done or failed to do that may have offended you. I also forgive you for all your actions against me. I pray that the God of peace will liberate us from all bitterness and selfishness as we trust in him our hope, joy, and crown of rejoicing. Love, Mom. Joy to the world the Lord has come, wishing you all the blessings of the season. Looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith, who for the joy set before him endured the cross. Hebrews 11:12. Peace and love, Mama and Papa. I realize the grammar isn't perfect, but I intended to convey her words as faithfully as possible. Anyway, since letters appear to be her preferred form of communication with us, I plan on sending her and my father a letter. It will detail how she has affected me and my relationships with everything God, my siblings, my friends, and most crucially, her. Everyone I've shared this with predicts she will respond poorly. And honestly, I don't anticipate a positive reaction either, but I want my words to linger in her mind so that she and my father can see in writing the damage she has caused, while also presenting my own ultimatum: seek therapy, address their issues, and confront their ingrained sexism, homophobia, and religious bias which they have imposed upon each other. In any case, I doubt either of them even knows what Reddit is or how it operates, and given their reluctance to use even mild language, I feel fairly confident that they won't stumble upon this on their own. Thank you for your attention. I eagerly await any suggestions you may have for my siblings and me, and I will do my best to keep you all posted.